program. Quarterly workshops are held in your area for in-person support. Become a part of something bigger. Visit ncblackalliance.org/CLC to learn more and apply. Together, we can create a breastfeeding friendly community that thrives.
Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you feel it? Awesome. Awesome. 106.9. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you hear it? Awesome. Awesome. 106.9. Awesome radio. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you feel it? Awesome. Awesome. 106.9. Awesome radio. Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. Can you hear it? Awesome. Awesome. 106.9. Awesome radio.
WBISLP 1069, Winterville, Ayden, Grifton, Southside, Greenville, North Carolina.
Motivations with Glen.
Good day, everyone. You are tuned into Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. This is the Glen Jonson Show, Motivations with Glen and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. Our topic of discussion today is Black history. We have quite a few documents, so this will be part one, and perhaps we'll do part two next week, because reluctantly, I inadvertently left my laptop at home that contains some audio and other documents concerning Black history. So, pardon me, but we'll get to that next week if we don't have time today or don't get through all of it today. And as we move forward, let me make this brief statement. If you don't know, if you don't understand why we have a Black History Month, you're the reason why we need one. Would you agree?
Definitely, Dr. Glenn.
And ladies and gentlemen, here's my co-host, Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams.
Hey, Dr. Glenn, and to our listening audience on today, we are glad to be here. And for our new subject on today, we're going to talk about Black History Month and the celebrations. This particular subject can stretch out and range in many different places. So I'm not going to promise you of what we're going to speak about totally today, but we are going to give you some reasons as to why we should celebrate Black History Month. I also had a document that had the history of Black History Month, and I'm not sure if I have it today. If we don't get to it today, we'll get to it next week, because this subject is so vast and so wide, and also a lot of celebrations that are going on in this country, in this season now. And even last week, Winterville had a celebration, and Dr. Glenn was one of the speakers. on the panel as well as others. They even invited some of the young people that were from various schools in different places. And I really thought it was a great thing to show that forth as Black History Month and some of the history of this area. I wasn't in attendance, but next year I will definitely try to get there. But I did see some pictures from it and I did see some articles from it, and I thought it was a very great thing.
Because there was a young lady there that represented the school that you worked for. So she was there, and I spoke to her briefly, and I advised her or told her that I anticipated your arrival soon, but unfortunately you didn't. I wasn't able to attend. But I did tell her that we spoke, had a very meaningful conversation. Anyway, what is some of the areas of Black history? Let me go to the part where I'm looking for down here. In every area, we've been allowed to participate, and we've always been the best. So in science, there's a gentleman by the name of Enop or Granville Wood or Louis Vladimir or George Washington Carver. We're talking about Black excellence. If if it's in business, we have been strong men and women uh, there as well. Reginald Lewis, John Jonson of Ebony Magazine, and Education, Carter G. Woodson, Benjamin Mays, and Mary Futrell. You name the area, we've been good in it. What about the movies? Who has the best or greatest box office attraction? Eddie Murphy. What about sports? Who's the best in basketball? The best basketball player? Michael Jordan. So when it comes to sports and media, particularly media, I will point out this right quick. Speaking of Black history and media, our owner here at Awesome Radio, Mr. Keela Thigpen, she is the first African American female to 100% own a media network in Pitt County, North Carolina. She is third in the nation to 100% own a media network, third in the nation. When it comes to sports, we're going to get to at least four, well, maybe today we'll get to three. These gentlemen have been very influential in sports as well as civil rights and Black history. There's Charlie Ward, the name one. There's, of course, Michael Jordan. There's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, also known as Lou Alcindor. That's his original name, Lou Alcindor. Then he chose the Muslim name, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There's something very interesting about those three gentlemen I named. I know my co-hosts have one right off the top of her head, and that would be Muhammad Ali.
Definitely. And I wanted to say, Dr. Glenn, that Black history is not over with, it's still being made. History is still, as you mentioned, even, at the station owner, that's still being made. There are things that are still being written in Black history that are going on now. It's not over. It's not necessarily a thing of the past. And some of the greatest things that we have to see yet are still to come. There are people that are still making history.
That's right. Black history is the past, the present, and the future.
Definitely. Monuments and also remembering and taking note of those that are doing great things in the Black community, those that excel above others.
Do you have that quote from Reverend Dr. King?
Reverend Dr. King, I do have several quotes from famous Black people today, Dr. Glenn, and I took the time to write some down. Dr. King says, and this was a quote from Dr. King. It says, "Every man of human convictions must decide on the protest that best suits his convictions, but we must all protest."
And the thing about Dr. King is what I wanted to bring today. If you can look up that document real fast, Jackie. And a lot of people know about some of his famous speeches. I have a dream, so on and so forth. I've been to the mountaintop, but very few people know about the speech. If I had sneezed, if I had sneezed, and that's why I went to bring my laptop so I could play that audio clip, the actual footage of Dr. King's speech. If I had sneezed, and I basically know some of the details by heart. He was in New York City or in New York having speak at a book signing when a demented black woman approached him and said, "Are you Dr. King?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She took out a box cutter and stabbed him right in his chest. And all he said was he felt something heavy on his chest. Well, when she stabbed him in the chest, the blade landed less than an inch from his aorta. And when he came when he was in the hospital, the doctors approached him and they advised him that, Mr. King, if you had so much as sneezed, you would have drowned in your own blood. You would be dead if he had sneezed. And he had received all kinds of letters while in the hospital from the president, a lot of people, but there was a 12-year-old white girl that wrote Dr. King a letter. And she basically said, Dr. King, although it probably don't matter, but I would like to point out that I'm a young white girl. And I want to say I'm so glad that you didn't sneeze.
That was an awesome, awesome story. And I mean, it was actually just a testimony that he lived through that,
Yeah.
and that to think that even though, he's out there just trying to win and trying to help people through the acts of segregation during that time of history, that somebody came up and just wanted to do something vile to him, and just tried to kill him. That is something to think about, that, on your journey, that there is opposition and other people. And this woman, she was mentally ill, that did that and that hit him in the chest with that
Yeah.
box cutter. She was trying to kill him though.
And she was trying to kill him because she had she had some kind of feeling toward the NAACP and a lot of other different areas. Although she was a black woman, she was reluctant to participate in anything that was moving forward with civil rights or anything. She was totally dead set against the NAACP and took it out on Dr. King.
Yeah, she was deranged though. They found that she was mentally ill.
Yeah, and they sent her to a mental hospital in New York.
Yes, because that there were some things that were speaking in her mind. But when you deal with the public, you have to deal with all kinds. We're getting ready to go out for our first break, and we hope that you come right on back here and tune in with us as we continue to talk about Black history. We have some documents and some things that we want to share with you. We want to talk about why it's important to celebrate Black history. Some people, they look and they may say every year this thing is happening, and I'm so sick of it, and I wish we stopped doing it. But we need to continue on with Black History Month. Dr. Glenn?
Yeah, and before we got to the break, just let me mention this. We have an extra day for Black History this month. So usually we have 28 days, but there's 29 days this year because of leap year. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep it locked right here to the Glen Johnson Show. Motivation with Glenn. We'll return with more information for you in a moment.
My name is Jayla, and you're to see to my papa, Glen Jonson, on the radio.
From the Pacific Justice Institute, this is The Legal Edge, defending your rights as a Christian, a parent, and a citizen. Here's Brad Dacus.
Pacific Justice Institute applauds the Oregon's court decision to grant a reversal of a lower court validating employees' unemployment benefits. You see, PJI's Oregon attorney, Ray Hackey, is representing multiple employees who were denied religious exemptions for not taking the COVID vaccine, resulting in the loss of unemployment benefits and their jobs. Receive exclusive updates about all our active cases by signing up to become a legal insider at pji.org.
PJI provides legal representation without charge. Get exclusive email updates by registering for The Legal Insider at pji.org.
I broke off my knob at 106.9 FM to Awesome Radio, and I'm glad about it.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM, WBISLP. And as a reminder, you can listen to our station and to this program 24/7 via Awesome Radio website, www.awesomeradio.org. Also, as we broadcast live, we are on Facebook Live. We also have the various apps for your utilization, the App Store for Android users, and the, what's that other one for Mac users and Apple? I forgot what it was. At the App Store there, that's it. And Google Play for Android users. Sorry about that. Also, we're on Roku TV, and this broadcast will be available on Facebook, YouTube, and GPAT channel 23 suddenly. Jackie.
Yes, and so let's look at Black History here. And one of the things that it says here that Black History Month is a special time to reflect on the contributions and achievement of Black leaders, past, present, and future, to inspire future contributions, innovation, and achievement. All students benefit from learning Black history. You know, a lot of times we used to see that in school, but a lot of times now you may not be seeing it at school as much. And that's something that we as a community need to continue to promote and continue to promote for our kids. I mean, we have banners for all kinds of things in school, but Black History Month is something that needs to have banners that are there too as well. You know, it needs to be a special time what is set aside, even if it's just at the beginning of the school day, to begin to talk to kids about Black History Month.
And speaking of school, I remember when I was in junior high school. Oh, I know one particular teacher that comes to mind, and she wasn't concerned about Black history. She was more or less concerned about how I had my shoes laced. She asked me one day in front of the whole class, Mr. Glenn, she didn't say Mr. Glenn, she said, Glenn, could I ask you a question for a moment? Would you please stand up? So I stood up, and she said, I want to ask you, how come I didn't tie my shoes all the way up, all the laces all the way up to the tip top? I said, because I just don't tie it up to the top. She said, I just want to know because I wanted to make sure it wasn't some kind of gang affiliation or something like that. I'm like, are you serious? Of course not. I just don't like tying them. I don't button my shirt all the way up to the top. I don't tie my shoes all the way up to the last hole. I just don't do it. It just makes me more comfortable not doing it.
Wow. And she thought that was gang
Yeah,
affiliation.
she thought I was in some part of gang or something before I have my shoes laced all the way up to the top.
Ridiculous assumptions.
Yeah.
I almost wanted to ask you, you know, the race of that person, but we'll leave that out. It doesn't have to be any specific race. Ignorance can be on any race. So I wanted to say here too that our theme for 2024 for Black History Month is African Americans and the arts. You see, a lot of times we don't even know. We just celebrate Black History Month and we remember it that it's this month, but a lot of times it has a theme to go with it. And that's the part, the information that we're not often given. We just start looking at the people from the past and looking at those particular things to teach the kids, and we don't look at what the theme is for that particular year. So this year is African Americans and the art, and it talks about exploring the key influences African Americans have had in the fields of visual and performing arts, literature, fashion, folklore, language, film, music, architecture, culinary, and other forms of culinary expressions. That's a wide range this year.
Very wide range. And since you mentioned that, one document I didn't include in today's broadcast, we'll definitely have to include it next week, is names. Why so many African Americans are now taking on African names, so to speak. Like for a female, they might choose Lakeisha, they might choose Latifah, they might choose various names, Beyonce or Shakira. There's a lot of names on the tip of my tongue. I'm not going to mention them all, but why are they choosing these names? Because they want to be more related to their African descent. But by doing so, and which is why I want to have the document, there's some male names that's mentioned in that document as well. But by doing so, how does this influence your respective employer?
Now, that has always been the case. And, you know, with my name, I know, you know, it could be inconspicuous. You know, you don't know if, you know, what color when you see that name on. But some of the names, you definitely, when you see them on an application, it identifies you as being black. And in that, it can hurt you. You know, a lot of times you need, and so we saw that too, where a lot of people were choosing names that, you know, you couldn't tell what race the person was because they wanted their children to have a better chance for success. You know, instead of saying, you know, you naming them Malik or something, you know, that is more, you know, something that was more synonymous with being a person of color.
Yeah, that's synonymous with being a African American male.
Yes.
And they usually would say, "Oh, Malik, what's your criminal record?"
Like you automatically had to have one.
Yeah, because
Or
your
you,
name is Malik.
or you're being discounted right away because of your
Yeah,
color.
because
Yeah, because that, and it really is. It's sad to say, but that racism still, it still exists.
back in back in the late '90s, I was working for a private security and investigation company. So I was the manager of a seniors complex in Long Branch, New Jersey. The manager of the complex approached me one morning and she said, "Mr. Johnson, a resident came to me, something to my attention that happened overnight." I said, "Well, why did you come to me?" She said, "Because the person was black." I said, "So you referring to me because I'm black? Are you referring to me because the color of my skin, my complexion, or are you approaching me as black being my race? Because so and so is black also. He might be dark skinned, but his nationality or race is black because he's African American. So which one are you doing?" She at that point she just stepped away and they reassigned me.
Wow. Again, sometimes the ignorance.
Yeah, because I said if you referring as to my color, the contrast of my skin, I'm dark skinned, but I'm black. African. If you to refer to race, I'm African American, which means I'm black. But if you refer to it as a race, then you should approach so and so also because they're black.
Definitely. And then you can't go by color because sometimes there are people that are dark skinned and they're another nationality altogether. So, that it doesn't fly anymore because I mean really, definitely if you look at the hues, dark skin is in every race.
That's right. And then a lot of people like to refer to it by the color of their eyes, their pupils. Like you can't be African American or black and have blue eyes. That's uh that's a misconception because I have a cousin, she's African American and she has blue eyes. My granddaughter has hazel eyes. They turn gray and green and all kinds of stuff. And I have another cousin that has hazel eyes as well. So you can't determine it by the color of somebody's eyes either.
Definitely. And we're actually seeing, Dr. Glenn, some that are actually in Africa that have blue eyes. And I mean, they're very dark skinned with
Yeah,
blue eyes.
yeah.
So it can definitely happen with genes and things, and, with blood mixes too. A lot of times you don't know what you're going to get.
Like I don't know what the time frame was, but a lady over in I think it was the UK gave birth to twin daughters. One came out black, like African American. The other one came out Caucasian, white, and white as snow.
It can definitely happen with this mix. And, our hues range from very light, almost white until also very, very dark. So, we can't go or judge by any particular thing because when it comes to these genes, the genes, God is the one that chooses. So we don't get to choose what it is. So you could get anything. You could get a recessive gene from way back that comes up. And so, don't try to predict it.
Yeah, like a lot of people would say. Uh, Wait a minute, I just lost my thought. But Jackie, we got 40 seconds before we go to the next break. So, ladies and gentlemen, Jackie got something for 30 seconds.
Now we're gonna come right back and we're gonna talk about 5 reasons to celebrate Black African. I am just getting tongue tied today.
Black History.
Black History Month. We're gonna talk about 5 reasons. So come on right back with us and we'll get busy with those reasons. Dr. Glenn.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep it locked right here. Break that knob off here at the Glen Johnson Show. Motivation with Glenn. We'll be back momentarily. Oh, do you have any questions or comments? Don't hesitate to call in. Back in a moment.
My name is Dominique Eugene, and you're listening to Awesome Radio 106.9 WBIS.
Hi, this is Minister Andrew Davis. Are you overwhelmed with the cares of life? Are you stressed and don't know what to do? Does your spirit need encouragement? If the answer is yes, then tune in to Sound Biblical Truth on Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. and Friday at 7 o'clock p.m. Again, Sound Biblical Truth on Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. and Friday at 7 o'clock p.m. It will be food for your spirit and encouragement to your soul. And remember, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Have a safe and victorious week. God bless you.
We're back. You're listening to The Glen Jonson Show. You can reach Glen at glenjonsonshow@gmail.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Awesome Radio 106.9 FM, WBISLP. You are still tuned in to The Glen Jonson Show, Motivations with Glen and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. She wants to get to her next document. So without delay, I'm going to go over to her, and I'm going to ask her if she would get ready the 3 sports individual that I had mentioned, because there's definitely something I want to bring to everybody's attention about Mr. Charlie Ward. But when we get to that document, I do not want anybody to feel uncomfortable with some of the things I'm going to mention that's contained in that document. Jackie?
So celebrating honors the historic leaders of the Black community. And so, we need to remember, and I'm just saying this, Dr. Glenn, this is just right off the top of my head, right out of my mind, that especially with kids, sometimes in their environment, they may not have anybody to look up to all the time, or they may struggle with finding people that they can look up to celebrate as heroes or as role models. And Black history is one of those places that helps them to be able to expose some of the heroic acts and the things that people in the past have suffered, that they've went through and that they've lived through, and they also they've been victorious through. So it is a great thing to celebrate Black history, to show the historic leaders. You never know who your child is or what they're going to be. And so you want to give them examples out there. Sometimes, it can be a great inspiration to them. Or you look and they become great leaders and they say, well, who inspired you? And they begin to mention the names of people that they were taught through Black History Month, or that they were exposed through by teachers and in places that taught them and gave them heroic figures to look up to. Number 2, celebrating helps us to better steward to be a better steward of the privileges that we've gained. So it also reminds us of where we've come from. It helps us to be grateful for what we have, and where we are today versus where things have been in the past. And that we should not forget where we came from. We should be grateful. Celebrating provides an opportunity to highlight the best of Black history and culture. We hear a lot of negative things sometimes in the press concerning the Black race, and celebrating gives the opportunity to pull out the best pieces, to show off and showcase the best of the Black race. It is a great thing to have positive things that are spoken about your race, and to show and highlight those things that are more of a positive nature than always having something that you can depict and say, well, that's a Black person, or a Black person did this, or, having things that are looking like they're synonymous with our race. And so celebrating creates awesomeness, creates awareness for all people. It creates awareness for all people, not just the Black race, but every race. When you begin to explore that, it also exposes, especially when you are, and especially in school settings and different places of learning, it also, those particular places help other people to understand the Black race and to celebrate the Black race as well. So that's why it is good to have Black History Month, again, as I say, in the schoolhouses and different places of learning, where everyone can be exposed to the greatness that is in the Black race. Dr. Glenn?
And not to go off the subject, but I just want to mention this to our listening audience, particularly the residents of Winterville. You might have experienced power outages this morning around 10 a.m., because I know I did at least 7 times this morning. So I called the operations center, and the person I spoke to said they were working on it. Everything was under control. So by the time I left my house, everything seemed to be turned back to normal. So I just want to make that mention that everything should be back to normal in Winterville with the recurring power outages this morning. And Jackie, if you finish with those 5.
I have one more.
Okay, good.
Celebrating reminds us all that Black history is our history. Celebrate, and it puts it back in mind that this is concerning us, not just that this is something of the past, but this is a part of who we are. This is looking at who our ancestors were and those that came before us. And a lot of times we want to dissociate ourselves. A lot of times, oh, I've seen people, Dr. Glenn, dissociate themselves with slavery. My family was not slaves. Well, how do you know? Do you have the bloodline tracked all the way back? Do you know every uncle and the ones that are way back there? A lot of I've seen people do it. They want to dissociate themselves with slavery.
Yeah, I mean,
This is our history.
and that's right. It is our history because I used to think that way also. I said, well, I don't know anything about Africa. I wasn't never in Africa, but I learned at my grandfather's funeral. My grandfather was an original slave. He met my grandma in Richmond, Virginia, and formed their union, and that's how I came to be in existence through my mom. My mom was the youngest girl, the last born to my grandmother and grandfather's union. And so that's why I'm in existence through my grandfather, who was an original slave.
Yes, it's nothing wrong with seeing the stories as victory and seeing it as victorious, all the way back from slavery to where we are now. But sometimes people, they just don't want to associate with that. They don't see it as victory. They see it as something that needs to be shunned and, hidden away or whatever. That's the foundation that we have built upon. We came out of that. And now look at where we are. We have such great opportunities.
Which is why we won't get to this today, but I'll make sure we get to it next week. That's a document on continents and nations. Our continents, like the continent of Africa, the continent of Africa consists of 54 or 57 different states or countries. But we are in a country, we are in a nation. But what is a nation? The definition of a nation is a group of people based upon their ethnicity. So we as black people are African American. Aren't we a nation within a nation?
Definitely.
And that has been argued before, has been brought up to the government. And it says, like I said, I don't have the document with me, but I'll make sure we have it next week. It says, well, if that was to occur, and this has been brought up to the government at least 2 times from what I was looking at, if that was to happen, would we be African American or just black American? They said, well, if you was to form a nation, it consisted of only black people or African American. No, you wouldn't be black American or African American. You'll just be American.
Wow, and that is a great question. And I did hear that question posed a few weeks ago as to whether, we should change our name from African American to Black American. And I mean, it's a great question to think and consider about. I mean, I feel like, and this is just me, Dr. Glenn, I'm putting my 2 cents in. Nobody asked me, but I'm putting it in anyways. I feel like we don't have any association with Africa. I mean, it's been so long till we don't know the African ways. We've forgotten those things.
And that's why I think in the conclusion of that document, and we'll make sure we have that next week so we can discuss it further, but it said if we all was to form our own independent nation and become just American, then we'll just be American because we were born in America. If you were born elsewhere, then there's something to consider. But if you were born in America, you would just be American.
But do they call other races just American? They're all identified. We're all identified by something. So that we can't be just called just Americans.
Well, that's why it's been up at least 2 or 3 times already. It's probably going to come up again. But there's a lot of things to consider about that. So then they will have to eliminate affirmative action, all kinds of different stuff. And how would that affect the taxes, the federal tax system? That's something to consider. So that's probably why it has never been done.
Well, they, at first they were just called Americans, the Europeans that came over here and they found it, they came from many different countries. They didn't all keep their identities. Some of them just became Americans. And so, it's a great thing to look at. We'll continue to look at that. And next week, we're going to bring that back up.
All right, but here's a question before we go to the break. If you are a Caucasian person, you relocated to the United States, and you become a United States citizen, American citizen, and you're a Caucasian. Now, you come from Africa. Are you African American? But you're Caucasian. The answer to that question is no. They still refer to be called African. Don't matter if they're Caucasian or a black person, they still want to be referred to as African because they wasn't born in America.
Very interesting, Dr. Glenn.
This is 106.9 FM. We'll be back in a moment. Awesome radio. Back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Keep it locked right here to the Glen Jonson Show.
This is Max McLean. Where can one receive forgiveness for his sins? If he abandons his faith in Christ? Listen to the Bible from Hebrews 10. If we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sin is left, but only a fearful expectation of judgment and of raging fire that will consume the enemies of God. Anyone who rejected the law of Moses died without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more severely do you think a man deserves to be punished who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, who has treated as an unholy thing the blood of the covenant that sanctified him, and who has insulted the Spirit of grace? From Hebrews 10. Listen to the Bible. It's great for the soul.
We are the station that provides inspiration for the family and ministry teaching for practical Christian living. Awesome Radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glen Jonson Show, Motivation with Glen and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. We're going to pick up where we just left off going to the break. And that was my question of, so a Caucasian individual relocates to the United States from Africa and becomes a United States or American citizen. Is that person African American?
Not as in race, as we're identified as African American, but they're from Africa. So not African. They wouldn't call it African American.
And that's why they said no. They would just like to be referred to as African. And I know a black female from Africa that now lives here in the United States. And her sentiment was the same. She expressed the same thing. And I said, oh, so you are an official African American, right? She said, oh, no, but Dr. Jonson, I refer to be recalled by my native heritage, which is African. She said, I am an African now, reside in the United States as an American citizen, but my nationality is that I'm African.
Definitely. Or they'll identify themselves by whatever country they come from. If it's from Rwanda, they'll say, I'm a Rwandan, or Nigerian, or they'll say Ghana, I'm a Ghanan. So a lot of times I don't see them identified. This is just personal to me, and maybe I haven't met enough African people, but they'll identify themselves even, like I said, by their country. I'm from this country, I'm a Kenyan. Is what they'll say. They don't call themselves and say, well, I'm African. They'll say, I'm Kenyan.
Yeah, you're right. Like a Jamaican would. I'm Jamaican. I'm from Jamaica.
Yes.
Or Haiti. I'm Haitian.
Yeah, they don't identify themselves, necessarily by a color.
It's such a big topic.
It is. It's a lot of things to learn here. It really is.
It is.
There's a lot of things that I said this is big and this is broad, and we may not cover it all, even in the 2 particular segments that we're going to have. And even next week coming back, as we're going to talk about, should we have a separate country, and also more about changing the name.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to have some people call in with some comments and questions, which now leads me to get to one of our sports figures, that is Mr. Charlie Ward. And I know some of the facts off the top of my head. I'm going to ask my co-host if she would get our document out, because there's something in particular I want to mention to everybody. And I don't want to disrespect anybody. I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable with this gentleman, because there's something I'm going to mention that might make some people feel uncomfortable. So Charlie Ward won the highest award that you can receive in collegiate sports. He won the Heisman Trophy, but he did not get drafted to the NFL. Instead, he went to play for the NBA, the New York Knicks to be exact. Why didn't he get drafted to the NFL? Because back in that day, the NFL did not draft black quarterbacks. But now they do. And they do an awesome job. But while playing with the New York Knicks, Charlie Ward became under some controversy because he was had a conversation with a Jewish fellow, and they basically took it all out of context. If you see it all there, Jackie, it's highlighted.
Mhm.
It might be on the last page.
It's the
all highlighted.
controversy.
Yeah. In 2001, while playing for the Knicks, it was discovered that Ward had made disparaging comments about Jews during a Bible study session, comments that were eventually leaked to the press. Among the comments made, Jews are stubborn, tell me. Why did they persecute Jesus? Unless he knew something they didn't want. Excuse me. Jackie, you want to go on with that?
Yes, it says, why did they persecute Jesus unless he knew something they didn't want to accept? They had his blood on their hands.
Yeah, I apologize. And then if you keep reading, this is the part that's really, really touching. And I had to ask a Jewish friend of mine, as well as a Christian, and I asked my pastor at church. Here is the controversial part, and I don't want anybody to be upset or feel any kind of way about this. So his Jewish friend, his name just happened to be Jesus Christ. That's what his parents named him, Jesus Christ. And I said, wait a minute. If he's Jewish and they have a total separation from Jesus Christ, why would his parents name him Jesus Christ? So the Jewish person I spoke to said, well, she kind of thought that was a form of child abuse or child neglect, because that boy probably grew up all his years in school, probably been tormented, teased, and bullied because his name was Jesus Christ. And she said, yeah, he probably was like, oh, so you think you're Jesus? Well, not that kind of Jesus, because Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem. You were born in Israel. That's the difference. Plus, Jesus Christ, if you're a Christian, is our Lord and Savior. So I thought it was kind of slap in the face that parents would name this young boy Jesus Christ. Could you imagine what he must have went through growing up, being named Jesus Christ?
Yes, well, and I want to say this, Dr. Glenn, because I have been to Israel twice. There are Messianic Jews, and then there's the Orthodox Jews. You know, there's a difference here in the ones that believe. There are some that believe in Jesus Christ. The Messianic Jews, they believe in Jesus Christ.
I thought so, because I know some of them do utilize the Bible from time to time.
Yes.
As well as the Torah.
Yes, so some of them believe in Jesus, but then there's the others that don't believe at all that, in Jesus, and they're still waiting for the Messiah.
Yeah, and I also know a comedian who was born on Christmas Day. He's Jewish, but since he's a comedian, he makes a little routine about it, and basically says, well, he had walked into this store, had to produce ID. So when he attended the ID, he said, oh, I see you were born on Christmas. He said, I bet you get gypped out of a lot of gifts and presents. He said, well, I'm Jewish, so I get gypped out of the whole thing because now the focus is on Jesus and not my birthday.
Well, that happens in every community when your birthday is on the 25th.
Jesus overrules.
I hope people still give them presents in that month.
Well, they probably do, but is it a birthday gift or a Christmas gift?
It's both, a birthday and Christmas. It's a dual gift.
But going back to Charlie Ward for a second, because we only got 2 minutes for this segment. So things eventually worked out. Ward eventually apologized for those statements, with an apology being accepted by the Anti-Defamation League. And if I'm not mistaken, looking down the document, Ward went on to have a part in creating the Christian Athletic League, or Christian Athletic Association, with their Bible study and things of that nature.
Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Oh, thank you so much for getting to that part. I couldn't see it on my document.
Yes, it's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so we see that a lot too, Dr. Glenn, even now in our time, that people that are making statements about other races and particular things that are in a derogatory place. And I mean, you have to watch what you're saying, especially when you're over and you're in authority over other races. You can't be sitting in those places and hating those people or making these statements that are just very insensitive to other people's race and culture.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to watch your tongue, so to speak. You have to be leery about what you say around certain people, anyway, because People love to take things out of context.
We're seeing people lose jobs. They're being exposed for those particular things, those things that they have hidden in their heart, and now they're saying it out in front of other people is being captured or is being sometimes typed and recorded, and now it's being brought back up and being placed out in the public to show and expose the hearts of those people that are supposed to be in leadership. And I don't care if it's on a football team, basketball team, whatever kind of team, or whether it's in this was the athletics that he was, and he was an athlete. And here he is saying something that got him in trouble. You need to apologize and you need to go sit down. And then if you mistreated anybody, you need to pay them. Dr. Glenn?
And that's why he apologized. And the whole thing corrected itself. So I'm glad for Mr. Charlie Ward.
Definitely. That was a great thing that you showed us here, Dr. Glenn. We're going to I'm going to give a scripture before we leave, Dr. Glenn, and we're getting ready to go out for a break. And when we come back, we'll be going towards the end of the show. But I want to give just one scripture on honor because Black history is about honor.
That's right. We actually have a couple more doctors. We're going to get to two more athletes. Then our Apostle Cullins Williams is going to get to her documents and scriptures. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned into Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. Back in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
150 over 90, and I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure sounds like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from silent. Get back on your treatment plan or talk with your doctor to create a plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
Head to toe, everything's changed.
Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
Amos 9:6 declares, "He that calleth for the waters of the sea and poureth them out upon the face of the earth, the Lord is his name." This seems to be pointing to the hydrological cycle found in nature. But does the Bible know best? In 350 BC, Aristotle proposed this: "The finest and sweetest water is every day carried up and is dissolved into vapor and rises to the upper region, where it is condensed again by the cold and so returns to the earth." Long before Aristotle was born, the book of Job taught, "He maketh small the drops of water. They pour down rain according to the vapor thereof, which the clouds do drop and distill upon man abundantly." Aristotle attempted to attribute everything to nature, but neglected to give glory to the designer of our hydrologic cycle. We find once again that the Bible knew best. I'm David Reeves. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
For more information, visit David Reeves Ministries at davidreeves.com. David, RIVES.com.
My name is Jayla, and you're to see to my papa, Glen Jonson, on the radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glen Jonson Show. Motivation with Glen and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. We have reached our final 10 minutes of today's broadcast. So without delay, before I go back to my co-host, I just want to mention the last two athletes for the day. I'll try to combine both of them together and then hand it over to my co-host. So the next two athletes would be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, also known as Lou Alcindor, which is an original government name. Lou Alcindor, which a lot of people do recognize him by that name, but more often Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The other one would be Michael Jordan. Both of these individuals received the highest civilian award from the government, the Medal of Freedom. And President Obama delivered or awarded them the medals. When it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's turn, the president spoke, and I'm not going to quote everything because I want to move along with the program. If the NAACP, no, not the NAACP, the NCAA, I'm sorry, the NCAA, National College Association, anyway, Collegiate Association, they banned the dunk because, as President Obama said, and I quote, although they didn't say it was about Kareem, you know it was about Kareem because he can get up that high and dunk that ball, which made it very difficult for the opposing team. And that was one thing. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went on to have a great influence in civil rights and a lot of different other areas. We'll get to more deep detail about that document next week. And then there's Michael Jordan, When you're referred to as the Michael Jordan of, that means that you are great and you're excellent in what you do. So you are the Michael Jordan of. And I told our pastor after I gave the speech at Mount Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, I said, our pastor, of course, he's a shepherd of God. He's our he's our pastor, but I would consider him, with his permission, the Michael Jordan of Mount Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
You call it the GOAT, the greatest of
The
all
GOAT, the
time.
greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right.
Definitely, Dr. Glenn. Nelson Mandela said, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got up again."
That's right.
I think that's a very great quote.
I love that one, yeah.
That's a very good one. And also, I'm going to say Aretha Franklin said, "Be your own artist. Be confident in what you are doing. If you're not going to be confident, you might as well not be doing it."
Yeah, and see, she mentioned that about being your own artist. And I'll just mention briefly what Tyler Perry spoke about at Aretha Franklin's funeral. And he said Aretha Franklin sung many genres of music, classical, jazz, soul, R&B. But when she sang gospel, it was the creator connected with the creative, and the creative connected with the creator.
It was one of her best-selling albums, I believe, when she did the gospel album.
Yeah.
And that was such an awesome thing to see that be her highest-selling album. That is so awesome, Dr. Glenn. I'm going to give...
Wait a minute. Another influential music artist was Tina Turner. You know how powerful and important she was in the United Kingdom. They had the Royal Guard play Simply the Best instrumental version in front of Buckingham Palace.
Wow, for Tina Turner.
Tina Turner, yeah.
Yes, Tina was somebody awesome too. There's so many we could mention that we could go back and mention in Black history that are so influential in the music and in our culture.
Let me put it this way to sum it up, what you just said. In 2 months, I'll be 64. I can tell you 64 years of Black history, but we don't have 64 years to talk about it.
Definitely. And I am 54. I do know some of it. 10 years younger, but I know some of it, but not all of it. And I'm still learning. But I wanted to give us one scripture about honor. And this is exactly to sum up what Black history is all about. It's about honoring those that have excelled in certain areas in Black history.
Pioneers,
trailblazers, whatever you want to call it, but great people. People that have done great things and people of greatness. And the scripture is Romans 13, it's 7 through 10. And it says, "Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear for whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth has fulfilled the law." But it talks about here giving them custom, the custom to whom is due a custom. Honor to whom give honor to whom honor is due. That's what the Bible says. And these people from our past that we're looking at, they've done great things. You know, we can't even imagine touching some of these things.
And before we go off the air, we'll probably have to get back to this next week, but I also want to mention some of the words we were formerly used to describe a Black person or African American. The N word, we have been described to as many N words, and I'm not going to say one of them because I know a lot of people get upset about this word. But Negro and Negroid, did you know? And I have a document on that I'll share with everybody next week. But if you would like this document, and there's several documents concerning this from the Census Bureau, from the government, and particularly the military, and that is the word Negroid. That word has supposed to have been removed from any government document, but when it comes to the military, it was supposed to have been distracted or I can't see the word, but it was removed from any military document. And if it's still there, it's cause for a civil judgment.
And you know, in other countries, Dr. Glenn, some other places, they still use those terms to describe that those people in the country, in a different country, that they are Black people.
Yeah, that and the document does state that, in some countries it does exist.
Yeah, it still does now. I mean, that is today. You will see negra on some.
Negra, yeah.
Yeah, and that distinguishes the
Even
race.
even in Spanish.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah.
And that distinguishes black or the African blood, versus being white or lighter skinned in that country.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that when we got more time. 'Cause that's a big, huge document, particularly when it comes to the military. And I know for a fact that's supposed to have been deleted off of any military document. The word Negroid.
Yes, Dr. Glenn, even next week I'll bring back a few more quotes for us because I have quite a few. We're getting ready to end our show on today. We hope that everyone has enjoyed the things that we brought here, and we're going to go more in depth next week. Dr. Glenn, you have a few more things?
I just want to go and mention a quote, if you can bring that up, by Oprah Winfrey's half sister, Patricia Lee. It says her legendary sister, half sister, Oprah Winfrey, she chooses to do was. Jackie, you want to get to that document?
I have it here,
Go
and
ahead.
you have it underlined, and it says, "So I believe in a higher power. So I believe that things will work out the way that they should work out, and not to force things to work out the way that you want it to work out." And that's her quote.
And she quoted that because the interviewer had asked her why hadn't she approached Oprah when she should have, or she said, well, she wanted to protect Oprah. She didn't want to just come out the blue and say, yeah, I'm your half sister, because a lot of people would just use that to their advantage to try to get money or something, or to gain some personal gain. She said, no, she respects her sister to protect her privacy, and since she's a well-known figure, she didn't want to do anything to disturb her life either. So that's why she made that quote.
Definitely. Malcolm X said, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything." We've heard that one quite a bit.
I heard that one, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one to remember. And so we're getting ready to close and end our show on today. We hope that you learned some very powerful things and even enjoyed the quotes. Next week we'll come back with some more, and we'll be ready, and we're asking you to join us again next week as we continue to talk about Black history. Dr. Glenn.
So phone your neighbors, phone your friends, call your children, have everybody tune in. I promise I'll bring my laptop so I can play at least 2 audio clips for you. One from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, "If I Had Sneezed." I think that is so important for everybody to hear. So stay tuned for next week. Like I said, phone your neighbors, phone your friends, and tell them to lock it in right here to Awesome Radio. The Glen Jonson Show, Motivations with Glen, here on Awesome Radio, 106.9 FM. Should you need any of the documents, kindly email me at glenjonsonshow@gmail.com. That's Glen with 2 N's, johnsonshow@gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a blessed day.
Changing